we started following something we describe as model-driven development, where if you do API first, you generally defining the actions you're going to take, not necessarily the data you're taking action against. Java was really never meant as, JSON was never meant as a modeling type language or anything. So we all, was a head scratcher to us why people would do that. But then the other point of view is if you're a database person, you start actually defining the data and not necessarily the actions. So we decided to be weird and do both at the same time. So we actually made our own modeling tool as open source. It's out there, where we define both the data structures as objects and the messages that you can take actions against it together. In other words, nouns and verbs. We go ahead and define in a modeling language, and pretty much like UML, what the nouns are and then what verbs you want to take against those nouns, and then wrote our own compiler to say, okay, take those descriptions and put them out as an open API description document. And from there, tooling can take and generate anything you want from that, your APIs and everything else you want to do. So just that as an introduction to what we put out there as standards in the travel industry. For 25 years, we have defined both models and messages to go ahead for any interaction between anybody in travel, that we have a baseline that everybody uses. So moving on with the presentation, let me give you a little bit of background on myself. I've started in travel IT in the late 70s. So when I started, we had 56 KB leased lines, and the protocol was only 6 bits. So if you've ever seen an actual agent entry, you kind of look and see what they're doing, you'll notice everything is in all caps. Why? Because with 6 bits, there isn't enough combinations to do upper and lower case. So we had a lot of challenges at the time and some very fun technology changes and everything to connect everybody in the world, every airline, every hotel and everything with this type of technology. So the technology has evolved during this time forward. Again, the protocol we originally used, I'm sure none of you have ever heard of, was called P1024B. And it's evolved since then. So we've changed the technology, but the interesting thing is we never really changed the business process. So while we first were doing this and in effect computerizing, the word we were using at the time, what the travel reservation processes were, those had been defined 10, 15 years before, in the late 50s and through the 60s. Because airlines already had to interline and connect with each other and exchange passenger information and fare information and ticket information and all kinds of things, and this was done manually. We had teletype, we could send things that way, but the actual process of how one airline books another and how you know what the other's fare was, and then gradually extending to hotels and other things, what was going on, was all defined, and then a group of people started getting together in the late 60s, and in 1972 we brought up the first system that actually computerized the business process that had been followed since the 50s. Well, the thing is while the technology has moved on, that business process hasn't. So my contention is that travel distribution today is still firmly stuck in the boombox era. So if we go back to the 1980s, we had just analog and physical means to distribute music and video. So that created an interesting dynamic where there was gatekeepers that could say who could really record their music and distribute it, or their movie and distribute it, because physical media had to be produced and shipped and other things like that. So if you were, quote, the record label, you would not necessarily just let anybody that says, hey, I got a new idea for a song, let me record and distribute it, because somebody would have to be producing the vinyl or the tapes and have a warehouse full of them and want to make absolutely sure it was actually going to be sold, that they weren't going to be stuck with a warehouse full of records nobody wants. So that put in a gatekeeper and everything to say, okay, who was making the decision where this was a good marketing opportunity or a good sales opportunity or not? There was all kinds of other things that came through, but you can see through the timeline here, We did, as an industry, gradually move to a digital description of media, and that's what ended up on CDs. The problem was the internet capabilities at the time could not handle the size of the files because they were huge damn files. So it wasn't until MP3 and MP4 came along when they managed to compress the messages enough and internet capability got forward enough, advanced enough, that we could have what I would put in here, our Napster moment. That somebody said, okay, screw the record publishers and everything else. I'm just going to pick up the digital media and start distributing it, across the internet. And you all know there was a lot of lawsuits and everything going else, but that's when within 10 years of that Napster moment, the industry completely changed. Who could publish, who could control it, where the gatekeepers were. Most of the gatekeepers went away. The whole industry changed during that time. Well, for us in travel, we still haven't had that Napster moment. So we defined digitally a long time ago how to distribute travel products, which again are just by their nature digital, because you're just finding out about a flight or a hotel and what the fare is, and then you book it. These are all digital exchanges. So in 2000, we went ahead and published XML, and as I said, made XML messages for pretty much everything. And then we followed on, and since then have had this model-driven development, everything where we can produce pretty much any format you want, but right now we are still doing XML and then JSON going forward. So we had the means to digitally distribute travel. And so as of 70s into the 80s, we had all that, but the business process hasn't changed. What happened is our gatekeepers in travel is complexity and cost. Complexity driving the cost. It costs a lot of money to connect to 450 airlines. Why? Because they all do it differently. I may give them the standard messages, but they extend them and add some other bells and whistles and do things. They never explain their workflow. Their API documentation is generally poor to begin with. And critically, you don't know the rules. What you can actually sell to whom under what circumstances. So in order to work in this industry, if you're connecting to all those airlines, and you're connecting to a dozen major hotel chains and car rental chains, everybody else, every API, and I did this as in one of the big distribution systems. I was the VP of architecture. So the most common message is availability, where you get the list of the flights, or you get the list of the hotel rooms, or whatever. And we had to deal with over 1,000 of these APIs that did exactly the same thing, but differently, causing custom code for each one. So what happens is if somebody has a small hotel, or we're in the Airbnb era, or tour operators and anything, you don't connect to them because the cost is too high and you will never recoup it with a booking fee. So the vast majority of travel content is not available to you as the average traveler. And the knowledge to which to put air, car, hotel, cruise, and all these other things together is largely in the head of trained agents. So even if you said, well, let's throw AI at it, the problem is we're not talking financial or revenue accounting, where there's lots of things documented on exactly what the process is. The process is still in the heads of people like me and everything that grew up with this stuff and can navigate the craziness. So that's the gatekeeper. The complexity of IT costs and that complexity of how you actually string things together to get anything done. There's actually a very finite number of people that know how to do that. So if you put up a site with your AI or LLM agent today, you may be able to discover the travel opportunity out there for your customer, but you can't book it. You would have to pass it off to somebody with the knowledge and the capability and the expertise to actually navigate the chaos out there to actually get the booking done. So that's why my claim, we're still in the boombox era. There are still gatekeepers, and there's a whole lot of travel content that you don't have access to, and we can't LLM our way out of this because the available data is in poor condition, and the vast majority of the data you really want isn't even available. So what does the customer really deserve? How many of you enjoyed your experience booking your trip here? Was it really pleasant and easy? Most people would say, no, mine was a royal pain in the ass, and I know what I'm doing. So what we really want, or the traveler, I say really wants, is that given the age of LLM and AI agents, I should be able to say to some app, I'm going to the OSS conference in Amsterdam, figure it out. These are my attributes. You know me because you're an AI agent or something that I have my personal information shared with. This is the company. Here's our travel restrictions in my company or other things. That all information could be available to an AI agent and just say, just figure it out. But we're a long way from here to there, and it's not a technology problem. The technology needed is fairly well understood. So what we're missing is orders of magnitude more what we call actionable offers, where if I discover it, I can just say, book it. Or an AI agent can discover it and say, oh, here's the best hotel for you. Here's the best, what airport to use. Here's the ground transportation. Here's things to do you might be interested in. Just go ahead and set it up. That information just isn't available. So another way I would compare this or kind of explain the process we're going through to fix this is that these systems developed in the 70s, and yes, some of that code still has my name on it, was meant for trained human agents. That a lot of the business process and how to deal with the differences or exceptions, everything, was all in the head of a person. It's not written down anywhere, or at least something that's discoverable by an LLM. And it was made for request reply. You can kind of equate this to traveling with your kids, sitting in the back seat going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How about now? 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 How about now? You have to keep asking these systems. They're built on a request reply thing, and it's not even a query. You're actually requesting specific information, like an availability or something. So the only way to really know what the fare is to try different combinations of things to see which fares will work for you. And you have to go ahead and then ask further information or even attempt to book it and fail because it turns out there is some rule or restriction and everything that you weren't aware of. And that's how AI agents trying to do this today are having to approach it. It's by trial and error. And if you want to train an LLM, it takes massive numbers of messages that hopefully somebody gives you access to go ahead and train the agent to what to do in all the goofy situations you end up in. So again, we haven't really changed that. It's like asking or answering all the questions to your human travel agent because they need to gather all this information and negotiate the complexity of travel. What we want to get through or get to is a publishing approach. Again, this is a polling model we're on today, or you could say a pull model. We want to get to a publishing or push model. This, like most other retail opportunities, here I have my old-timey hotel owner, and he's actually publishing, these are the various types of products he has available to sell. And he wants to put them on the store shelf and just go out there and open it up to the marketplace that here's my price, here's my terms and conditions. You want to buy this product. We don't need to play 20 questions. Here's the product. You can act on it. You can press the book button. I've now given you in a publishing model the price, the product description, and all the terms and conditions that go with this. I've given it to you as a single object that we call a universal open offer. It doesn't care what it sells. It could be an airline seat, a train seat, a berth in a cruise ship. It could be a room in a hotel. It could be a vase of flowers. It could be an insurance policy. This is like a digital truck. It doesn't care. It is just basically transporting the travel product from point A to point B, from the supplier to the sales agency or travel agency or LLM agent or AI agent that's requesting it. Don't know, don't care. We just transport things. It's basically a digital supply chain. So what then you can do with that is, yes, use an AI agent to say, okay, I've in effect educated the AI agent what my preferences are, what my basic company restrictions may be, but let the AI agent just go ahead and start picking up the travel products out there that are best for me, probably using something like relevancy-based scoring based on all the information available to the AI agent. And this is what we're trying to get to. The other important thing between these two slides is my provider of the travel information really wants to stay in contact with you. It really wants to establish the relationship with you, that you're my customer, I'm your supplier, you may have special status with my company. In fact, I'd like to go ahead and personalize the offer for your needs based on my information in my CRM system on what it is you like about my hotel chain, or any special treatment you're deserving. This gets put in the container along with the brand image and everything else that carries forward. Today, when you go through most travel agents or you look on Booking.com or Expedia or something, hotel rooms have been reduced to a commodity. It's just a room. Here's a room at this price at this location, there's a room at this price at location, and you know nothing about that room, about whether it really suits you or not. So with this process, the gentleman here, when he's publishing offers, can go ahead and even say, this offer is for you and you only. So it can get down to that specific. This could be an offer just for a business traveler or somebody who has, something with my hotel chain or my airline, or it could just be, specifically this is for John Doe and John Doe only, and I'm going to use a digital ID to make sure I get the right John Doe. But this completely changes things to a publishing model that can be very specific with personalization. So when this AI agent is picking it up, it may also be picking up things that really are a unique package just for you, because now it has all the information it needs to go ahead and say what is relevant to your situation and what is not. So the approach we're taking with this is following what everybody else in this conference has been doing. What we really need to do is commoditize a whole lot of what happens today to move travel products around into a way that is a community-driven, commoditized solution. So the way people publish their APIs and how they do the interactions to book something, this is not a competitive advantage to anybody. Again, as I said before, in some companies, you have to deal with 1,000 variations of an API that does the same damn thing. So we are going to publish using our models to say that the syntax and semantics and everything of that are consistent, and the behaviors of the APIs are in machine-readable language using OpenAPI. It doesn't mean everybody has to be the same. I don't care that you're different, I care in how you tell me. So by putting everything in an API description document, including workflows and using overlays, I'm giving an AI agent on the other side, or even code gen automation or other things, everything it needs to know that why American Airlines lets you book a premium seat before you actually book the travel, and United Airlines makes you book the travel first, and then you could change to a premium seat. Why is that difference? Doesn't matter. The fact is we would put this in a consistent way where an AI agent actually is told this, that the workflow is different from one airline to another. And all this is visible, including what the rules are. So what we're doing is today as Open Travel, we deliver messages and models and publish them, and then people modify the hell out of them. We're moving to the Linux Foundation now as the Open Travel Foundation, and what we'll be publishing then is the actual code, the actual function to publish offers, manage offers, and select offers. It'll still be left to your Booking.coms or new LLMs or new startups to say how they decide what's best for you as a personalized offer, how they run relevancy-based scoring, who does the best job of finding you the best travel products out there. That'll still be up for competition. In effect, again, as I said before, we're going to be developing and delivering a digital truck. Just a digital supply chain that says this is how you publish what you want to sell, this is what channels you want it delivered to, and we will get it there. What the channels do and how they display it on the store shelf and how they combine things into a door-to-door experience, that's what everybody else will develop and everything as proprietary competitive advantage. So we're partnering with the Linux Foundation because they know how to do big things, and this is a big thing. This will dramatically change how the travel distribution retail works. It will greatly affect the business models of today. So I've already had a lot of interesting conversations with people that their business model is basically anchored to the current chaos. Because as I said, there's a barrier to entry to this business because it is so complex. How do you do these things? That's why some vendors out there know it. They have the long-time skill. They have experienced employees that know how to deal with it, and startups don't. Well, this will basically remove that barrier. This will be pretty straightforward. How do you pick up the travel and how you sell it? So there's other things going on that is going to be very disruptive to this particular industry, and like disruption in other industries, it's going to be very helpful to have a kind of a big partner, a big brother like Linux Foundation to help make this happen. So what we'll be pulling together is, while we do these things specific to how travel needs to work, we'll be working with Overture Maps. One of their leaders is here. We will be working with OpenSearch, with Open Wallet. The Distributed Identity Foundation is going to be very important because on personalized offer, I have to make sure I'm offering it and booking it for the correct person. So we have a lot of big infrastructure things to do, security and everything else. And also, because of digital identity and security, maybe we can all stay out of GDPR jail. So we will be partnering with a lot of the other foundations and projects under LF. And that way, we'll be able to get this to product, not have to reinvent the wheel, and leverage as much as we can. So we really are working with a lot of big travel companies, some of the big tech companies. You can think of the people investing billions into AI today. One of their favorite examples, and sometimes I cut and paste some of them in here, is travel. Everybody likes to use travel as a use case when explaining AI and everything else. I've had to go to several of them and say, this is lovely, but let me explain to you why it's not going to work, not with the data available and the quality of the data today. So we're having a lot of good conversations with some of the big tech companies that are investing in AI to say, if you want this to work in travel, we have to solve some of these problems together. Because I can get you the data and then y'all do your thing, but we're going to need a little help in everything, getting the complexity out of this process, making things digitally ready for an AI agent to pick up. And so we have a whole lot to talk about. For the travel companies, we're getting more interest from those that'll actually run the channels, like a Booking.com or Expedia or others, because when they get the idea that, yes, they have an immense amount of travel content to sell you together to today, but when anybody can publish their travel offering at a low cost and anybody can pick it up, suddenly their portfolio of things to sell go just orders of magnitude wider. So some of the people that'll actually retail this stuff are getting interested. The suppliers, like airlines and hotels and everything, this is just making them nervous because, again, this whole revenue model changes. And then there's the ones in between that are generally the gatekeepers. They're really queasy about this because it starts sinking in as, wait a minute, my business model is based on, negotiating the complexity as a service. It's like, well, there's other things for you to do when the complexity goes away, like helping to organize the data and, putting together multiple offers as an offer and offers. There's just a whole lot of new business opportunities. So like in other industries in the past, there'll be some people that can really see it and will go this way because they can see the upside opportunity. There are some that say no because it is really threatening their current business model. And a bunch of them in the middle and everything say, I have to really think about this and start it and figure it out. But this is going to be disruptive, so it's going to get really interesting as we go forward. So what we've been explaining to a lot of them is that whether you like it or don't like it, you really need a seat at the table. And that's what the Linux Foundation is helping us with now. You should see in the next coming months an intent to form a foundation announcement. as we're pulling together these variety of companies from all over, trying to make sure everybody has a seat at the table, from the small hotel that can't get published today to a somebody huge, investing billions in AI today, and getting them all to the table to let's talk this through how it's going to work. So with that, just open for questions. Was this what you were expecting to see?
How do you differ trains, booking on trains from airlines? Are they the same data or are they the same kilos there?
I'm actually well qualified to answer that. Aside from working for airlines for the past 40 years, I was also on the Channel Tunnel project. I'd done work for the Chinese Ministry of Rail and the Indian Ministry of Rail. I did time at Amtrak. So side thing about that, don't let anybody tell you rail is easier than air. It is not. It is absolutely not. It's very interesting because an airline only makes 1 or 2 stops. A train under a single train number will make 99. So there's interesting things like that. And if you want to go ahead and do seat map management, that took a rather brilliant guy from Italy to figure out and everything for the rest of the industry, but that's another story. But there's a lot of interesting things, but still, when it comes down to it, their product would be represented in an offer pretty much the same as everybody else, that what their product is, what their terms and conditions, and how you schedule it. There's a lot of things you must have experience with this. Like when I worked for Amtrak, you could actually change the inventory count up to an hour before departure because they could decide to add another car. So that would imply that more offers could get published, or we change how the offers reflect it. It's just basically an inventory question, everything. How does an offer know when to turn itself off and potentially turn itself on again? So we have some interesting pub-sub things and everything on the technology side to work out. But yes, well aware of just how much fun rail can be.
No, I haven't had any work experience. I'm just having a lot of experience with train travelers at the Swedish market and how it worked before and how it's working today and how it's probably going to work tomorrow.
Right, and some rails. Okay. Some rail really is a simple ticketing thing, and they really don't do inventory control. But like Eurorail and the Channel Tunnel thing, SNCF, the whole thing, that's one of the big things we did, is have to add seat reservations, which again, on a long distance train gets really interesting. And night cars are interesting in Europe because particularly in Italy, once a woman books a berth in an overnight in a sleeper compartment, that compartment is taken on a sex. It is now a female compartment, and we had to put the things in there saying, nope, a single Italian guy cannot book in the same compartment. So there was a lot of interesting little rules, things, everything you never think about. But that would be again all reflected in how we publish the offers, and because we have to meet those needs aren't going to go away.
How do you rate the possibility to get a pan-European or pan-Asian or whatever system for train travel like they have over the years for airlines?
It will happen, but not necessarily the way it would happen today, because what you call interlining or sharing inventory counts and other things, this could actually change how you would approach that as well. Because if SNCF is publishing their offers this way, and so is Trenitalia and others and everything, it gets to be less of a problem now, because the problem they had before was SNCF having to book a Trenitalia car, a seat in another one. So it will cause them to take 2 steps back and saying, are we making this more complex than it needs to be? The Trenitalia offers are here, the SNCF offers are here. Now I'm just saying I'm going ahead and I'm going to still be the, quote, agent booking this, but I don't necessarily have to have the same agreements in place and everything that they've actually generally given me an allocation of seat inventory from one train operator to the other, and I don't necessarily have to do it that way anymore. So it'll cause some rethinking about that happen. So some of the formal agreements, and it's the UIC that controls a lot of how this works, the big standards body for rail worldwide. We will probably have to reach out to the UIC and make sure we don't step any toes there, because people think IATA for airlines is big. The UIC is 10 times bigger. A lot more people travel by rail. So it is some of these standards bodies and everything will probably have to work out some of the details, because they're the ones who run the businesses. So they still may have some demands, but yes, it will get interesting.
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand, like, are you guys offering, like, the rules, how the data is coming to this infrastructure? Because I'm really not understanding that part. I'm not sure if it's similar to the scenario like the open banking was having, like the connections to the banking system, because all the APIs were different. Or how is it?
It would be, again, on a publishing side, that when somebody publishes this unit offer, which again is just basically a container, and it holds product, price, and rules, what we'll agree as a standards body, as an implementation, is encoding, for example, for those rules. That it's in a standard format and done in a way that you, as the API consumer, can use the rules engine of your choice or everything, however you want to actually implement it. What we will do is work with the suppliers to say, you can pretty much have any rule you want. We may run into a brick wall or two, but just describe them this way. And so and that's where, again, the advantage for this, for the actual supplier, the rail company, hotel, whatever, it's still their rules. And they can still say, this is my product with my price, with my terms and conditions, and those will be respected at the other side. So one of the different things here is that it's actually the channel side that's going to be responsible for processing the offer and turning that into a product. And we will have a validation and non-repudiation schemes, everything, to make sure that the person who sold it respected the terms and conditions. That's going to be a tricky part, that the operator, the hotel or whatever, says, did you follow my rules? It will want some verification that their rules were in fact followed. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I worked in the past for the open banking industry back in Mexico, and I was remembering that they were having these problems. Like when the law was saying you guys have to open access with some specific rules for all the APIs, such that like the startups have access to the APIs. They were doing it, and afterwards they were like stopping the service, the maintenance of those APIs. So they were again still needing like huge groups of developers, engineers, like web scrapers, such that they were able to do this. Like set the rules such that they can manage all the data. So that's what I was trying to understand.
Right. We will have an interesting challenge with the transition. What happens in travel today is a lot of message normalization, where somebody puts out their so-called good APIs or whatever today, that somebody has to translate it to the kind of API format somebody else wants. And that's part of the middlemen that won't like this, because that problem will go away. But it won't go away immediately, because our rail example or hotel and everything, they won't be able to publish initially directly from their system this particular format of an offer. So what we'll be explaining to some of these existing companies that do message normalization is that now you need to move into offer normalization, which just basically means there's a little agent there that knows how the legacy commands to the back end, the existing back end works, and somebody will do that to populate the offer, which everything the standard and everybody else needs going forward. And then when the booking comes back, I guess I could say they have to denormalize it to go ahead and use legacy messages to the back-end reservation system. So until they go ahead and update their back ends, there will be some of this transition work needed, but it's not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward, and these kinds of things have been done before, and that's where AI code gen and everything may actually really help, because it's just a tedious thing that when we've described in machine language exactly what to expect from the API and exactly what to expect when the booking comes back, we should be able to automate a fair amount of the process of not only the normalization of the offer, the denormalization of the booking request that comes back. So again, some technical hurdles to figure out, but I haven't seen any yet that I consider as showstoppers. Like generally I find there's multiple solutions for these things. It's just getting the community together to jointly fund this kind of stuff is the tricky part. but there's tremendous labor takeout down the road from this and a tremendous revenue upside because, again, even a hotel, you would think they're just interested in selling their rooms. Well, what's at most hotel lobbies? A concierge. And that's where you kind of get the information where to eat, where to go, what to go see and everything. All that will now be available as also digital offers themselves. So the hotel, when it's selling you something now, instead of selling you a room, they will sell you an experience to say, you know, come to the conference, do this, I will take care of everything else. And this is what you have the spa here, you do that, but oh, by the way, there's a museum across the street or whatever. They would now have digital access to all that information to really customize an experience. So is that going to happen immediately? No, it's growing into that and getting the content in there. We're going to have to do some transformations for them, and it's like any technology overhaul. You generally start at the edge of the network and work your way back to, I'm an old mainframe guy, I'm used to this, work your way back and everything will fix it here. But yes, we'll have to put out the roadmap about how this starts happening and has more immediate value, but not everything's going to change overnight. I'm sorry.
No problem. How much of this could be solved if the documentation for the different, I guess, geographic, for Trenitalia, if that documentation was made available and online in a scrapable way, like, would that help, or is that part of the problem with that documentation and those rules aren't listed somewhere?
It really wildly varies. In hotels, and I always say, I can't believe I'm saying something nice about Oracle. They have a team that makes a property management system, a PMS. They have done a fantastic job, and they publish the workflow and everything they can, very easily consumable in a machine-readable way. Nobody else does. So even the workflow of the APIs is generally not published, and some of them actually go out of their way not to tell you the rules. And you may think, why would a company do that? When something like a hotel room is put out there or anything, it goes through people who do this message normalization. So by the time it gets to you from Expedia or whatever, it's just a commodity now. It is just a seat or it is just a room or whatever, and they hate that. They want you to come to their website where they can really connect to you as a customer and keep you as a customer. So sometimes, very oddly, they go out of their way to be a pain in the ass and not tell the channels what the actual rules are. It's like they want booking failures out there so to incent you as the customer to come back to the actual supplier, which of course you as a traveler means I have to connect to a bunch of different websites to figure out a trip, which is exactly bad for you. So it's going to take some getting used to, and the difference between scrapable or even some kind of text documentation is anytime we've done that, it never keeps up with the actual changes today, because terms and conditions on when a price is actually applicable or not, including it's a personalization just for you and you only, is very transient. So by putting as part of the process of publishing and doing normal market analysis and campaign management from systems that are, there's several big ones out there for offer order type processing where, again, they organize campaign management. Now the travel companies could actually use the SAP type and other, solutions out there and use them in a more normal way to forward think, these are the terms and conditions for this offer. They have nothing to do with the terms and conditions for this other offer, but they're going to get published all at the same time. Whereas I had to go to websites and screen scrape and everything, it'll frequently be wrong.
In your thoughts on where Airbnb fits in all of this?
Airbnb is interesting because they have a leg up on most hotel companies because they crowdsource things to do. So what the other hotel companies are interested in is this will make it where the things to do, even to the individual tour operator, if it's easily consumable out there as content, the hotel chains are going to love it because that's one place they get beat up by Airbnb. But even Airbnb, this will greatly simplify their publishing of individual properties. and probably simplify things for you as the property owner. It's a good question because it's an example of changing the model and who's that going to be good for or bad for. Right now, you sign a contract with Airbnb, you're kind of, you're locked in some terms of the contract. Can you sell it on Vrbo or everything at the same time? Maybe yes, maybe no. This would allow it to an individual property owner to just publish it themselves. And so some will handle that as a branding thing to say, if you want it branded and advertised by Airbnb, I'm still going to have some rules for you, but it will open up the market that anybody could technically publish this on their own. It's going to get interesting. Well, I've exceeded my time a little bit. Great questions, and glad you're all engaged. And the presentation itself, I did already upload so you can get it off the schedule. And thank you very much.